I'd like to welcome you to the 2018 Laity session for the Susquehanna Annual Conference. My name is John Knesny, and I'm the conference lay leader. I'm very fortunate to be able to serve in that capacity over the last number of years. And my role with Cabinet and the conference is to work with laity and churches around the conference to equip and connect and better enable laity to help them to make disciples of Jesus Christ to transform the world. This is going to be an interesting several days. We have lots and lots of information to cover. We have lots of prayers to lift up to the Lord. We have times that are very interesting within the church. And hopefully as we move forward, we can just keep in the forefront our mission, making disciples of Jesus Christ to transform the world. The agenda we're going to have today is going to be covering over the next 2 hours, and we're going to be providing information that you can take back home with you, to share with your churches, to utilize in your local communities to help make disciples. In a little bit, we're going to begin with a devotion. I'm getting some feedback from the mic, so I'm going to step over here. I'm going to begin with a devotion and a major presentation in the first hour. And then in the second hour, we'll include a time for community building. That's an old slide. Andrea Havistock, don't panic. She will not be doing a presentation. She gave up some of her time so that Kay could have time for her presentation, which is one of the main ones here at conference over these days. In the next hour, we're going to be hearing some important words from Kay Catan. Kay is, we're very fortunate. Kay is a credentialed coach, a nationwide church consultant, highly sought after public speaker, and she's a multi-book author. For several, probably a decade or so, she has served on the Healthy Church Initiative executive team for the Missouri Annual Conference of the United Methodist Church. And this past July, we were really blessed and fortunate for Kay to join the Susquehanna Conference team as a director of equipping vital congregations for our conference. Without any further ado, I'd like you to give a warm Susquehanna welcome to Kay Catan.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Did they hear us next door? We're supposed to be the fun group. Good morning.
Good morning.
Awesome. Are you ready for impact? We're ready for impact. I am so excited to be here and to offer the word today. When John asked me if I would come and speak to you at the laity, I went, of course, I'd love to speak to the laity because I am a laity. So we are going to talk about impact, reclaiming the call of lay ministry today. How does that sound to you? Amen?
Amen.
Amen. So we are a called people. All of us are a called people, and we are called for kingdom impact. Can we say that together? We are a called people. We are called for kingdom impact. Each and every one of us. It's not those folks sitting next door. It's all of us are called for kingdom impact. And I believe that one of the best examples of a lay leader in our sacred words of the Bible are from Nehemiah. How many of you like Nehemiah as a lay person? Don't you love Nehemiah? Let's hear about Nehemiah. Nehemiah is often regarded as an ideal role model for spiritual leadership, and he certainly is that. He had all the strengths of good leadership. He was decisive. He was well organized. He was a wise overseer of other people. He was a good administrator. and a skilled project manager who knew how to get things done. He likewise had a biblical qualification for spiritual leadership, godly character, a consistent testimony, a burning zeal for the Lord, a desire to serve, a commitment to honor God in all that he did. Above all, his prayer life was exemplary. Perhaps more than any other single character in the Old Testament, Nehemiah teaches us what a vibrant prayer life ought to be. Nehemiah also had all the traits for scripture associates with men who are called to shepherds and overseers among the people. He was passionate, but not driven by his emotions. He was a hardworking man himself, but he also understood the importance of delegating tasks. And he loved people, but never compromised on matters of principle. But what's often missed about Nehemiah is that he's primarily a model for lay leadership. Some of the key lessons of his life and work are as immediately applicable to lay people as they are to pastors and teachers in the church. Nehemiah himself was not a priest. He wasn't a scribe. He wasn't an expert in the law. He wasn't a theologian. He wasn't a teacher. As far as we can tell from Scripture, when Nehemiah began his ministry in Jerusalem, he had never been a leader of any kind. He apparently had no special training to do what he ultimately did. He was simply a model of hard work, practical ministry, and principled living. He is the epitome of what every lay person in the church should be, should aspire to. And his leadership shows us what all spiritual leadership should look like. When we meet Nehemiah on the pages of Scripture, he was a servant in the king's palace in Persia, far from his homeland, which he had never ever seen. As servants go, he was an important one. But this special status among servants certainly gave him no particular renown in Jerusalem. He was still a servant. He was no one's boss. In fact, as far as the people of God in Jerusalem were concerned, Nehemiah was an outsider. And in fact, a latecomer with direct ties to the ruling echelon of the former captors. That probably even made him somewhat suspect at first. So he labored among those as laymen and a fellow worker, and he earned their respect as a leader solely by serving them and by being a flesh and blood example of what all people of Israel ought to be. So, as it turned out, his work as a servant was training for his life's work. After all, servitude is the best kind of training for spiritual leadership, because a servant is exactly what Jesus said every true leader ought to be. Nehemiah is thus a reminder to us of how God uses the weak things of the world to accomplish his work. So the next time you read Nehemiah, bear this in mind. This book is full of rich lessons for people who want their lives to count, to have impact for the Lord. As someone who's a layperson myself, I love this aspect of Nehemiah's message. He teaches us that whoever we are, whatever our background or training is, or whatever our position in life is, God has gifted us. God has gifted us as called to use our gifts as servants. If we're willing to serve, he can use us in mighty ways. That's the story of Nehemiah. And isn't he a great example of who we are and who we're called to be? But you know, I also love this quote from John Wesley. John Wesley knew about the laity movement as well, did he not? Let's read this together when the screen changes here. This is a great quote from John Wesley as it talks about laity. Give me 100 preachers who fear nothing but sin and desire nothing but God, and I care not a straw whether they be clergy or laymen. Such alone will shake the gates of hell and set up the kingdom of heaven on earth. Amen. I care not a straw whether you are clergy or lay people. Friend, John Wesley himself reminds us the importance of the role of laity. We are a called people. Can we say that again? We are a called people. I'm calling for a renewal, a reclaiming of our role as laity. And I think nothing better than that is our Wesleyan covenant prayer. And we're going to use that as our devotion this morning as we're calling for a renewal. Usually the Wesleyan prayer is used for a renewal of the believer's covenant and affirm our commitment to God. Can we do that together? We need another slide. With me, please. I am no longer my own, but thine. Put me to thou wilt, rank me with whom thou wilt. Put me to doing, put me to suffering. Let me be employed by thee, or laid aside for thee. Exalted for thee, or brought low for thee. Let me be full, let me be empty. Let me have all things, let me have nothing. I freely and heartily yield all things to thy pleasure and disposal. And now, O glorious and blessed God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, thou art mine, and I am thine, so be it. And the covenant which I made on earth, let it be ratified in heaven. Amen. Amen. Friends, again, this is our renewal and a reminder of our God-sized impact that each of us can have. Each and every one of us are called for a God-sized impact. I always kind of cringe a little bit, and I've even been guilty of it myself when say, oh, I'm just a lay person. Would you remove that from your vocabulary? We are lay people. We are called for God-sized impact just like any other person, clergy or not. We are lay people. Please do not use just anymore. That's not fair to you or me, the person next to you. We are lay people called. Now, most of you know that I've written a few other books, and I never set out to write a book just to write a book. I never set out to be an author. That was never on my bucket list. But as I traveled the country, I found many areas where we're just lacking equipping. We're lacking opportunities for knowing exactly our role. And as I traveled the country, and I saw the number of people who were using that terminology, I'm just a lay person, or, oh, that's just clergy work, or, well, no, that's not what I'm supposed to be doing as a lay person. I began to have a little heartache around that. And so because of that, I had a friend of mine, actually a clergy person, who was having that same sort of heartache. And I said, how do we reclaim our Wesleyan roots? We are a lay movement. How are we going to once again be raised up to be the people in the movement that we once were? And thus was born the latest book called Impact. Impact, subtitle is called Reclaiming the Call of Lay Ministry. And that's what we're called to today, is to be thinking about how each and every one of us are reclaimed to the call of lay ministry. The book is going to be available for you in Cokesbury, and you're going to learn more tomorrow about a fall learning group around this book. So you'll want to pay attention to the opportunities that you can have impact. Now, some of the reasons that we decided to write this book, besides the heartache, were, Methodism was actually founded on the movement of laity. And through that laity movement, millions and millions of people were reached. And we have been a declining denomination since we came into an existence in 1968. How can we reclaim those roots and once again reach millions for Christ? Wesley believed that all could make impact, not just clergy, but all of us. Those are our roots once again. I'm calling for a rekindling, a sparking, and a set the laity on fire for reaching new people. That's what we're called to do. Friends, if your church has not had a profession of faith in the last year, I ask you why. That's our mission. Our mission is to make disciples. If we're not reaching new people, we need to have greater impact. You know, when we had the professionalization of clergy, more and more schooling was required. I think it changed the way we looked at that position. It's like, well, I'm not equipped for that. I haven't gone to seminary, so therefore I can't fill in the blank. And because of that professionalization, friends, we gave away, yes, we gave away our movement. We gave away the power and the impact as the lay people. Now, interestingly enough, history does repeat itself, does it not? Let's take a look at Acts 6. And in Acts 6, you'll remember that the disciples were increasing daily. Remember this? And our priests couldn't give up their responsibilities for preaching and teaching to care for the sick and the poor. So what did they do? 7 people were commissioned for this work. Lay movement right there. How are we doing that in our local churches today? Friends, we're looking for outcomes with a God-sized impact. This isn't a sprinkling, this isn't a little spark, but this is how do we ignite once again our culture so that we are no longer a culture that is non-church centric. We have become a church, we have become a world where we, the church people, are the minority. I don't want that to continue on my watch. Do you want it to continue on your watch? Let's change that. Let's change that. And there's enough of us that do that if we decide we want to have a God-sized impact. And friends, you could say we've been stripped of our ownership or we've been stripped of our missional opportunities. I think there's enough blame to go around, but we need to quit blaming one another and say, let's get to work and let's once again have a God-sized impact. We identified 8 different areas that we felt like were for impact. Now, there's probably way more than 8 different areas that could have a God-sized impact in your church. But let's just take a look at what those 8 are to begin with. Christ Church for Christ impact, cultural impact, discipleship impact, relational impact, missions impact, worship with impact, impact-focused lay leadership. And when your new pastor arrives, it's a great opportunity for impact. Over the next hour or so, we're going to spend time looking at each of these different 8 impact areas. And you can be thinking as we're walking through each of these, how are you having a God-sized impact in your church in each of these different areas? We're going to start with Christ Church for Christ's impact. Now, it's time to plant and harvest a new way, friends. The way we did evangelism, the way we were taught evangelism, simply is not working. I'm a 4th-generation Methodist, and the way I was taught evangelism is you invite him to church, right? How many of you were taught that? That's the way we evangelize, you just invite people to church. While that works sometimes, and people are more open to it than we are to the invitation or extending the invitation, we are in the relationship business, friends. And we first have to build relationships with people authentically. Then we talk about God and the church. You see, we've kind of lost how to do evangelism. And we think about it as invitation, or surely if we have just the right event, or it worked for that church, let's have this event, and it's not working. We have to realize we are in the relationship business, and relationships are messy business, are they not? Amen? But we have to be willing to get in the trenches and do life with people if we're going to build the church and we're going to have a God-sized impact once again. Friends, we have to have a complete buy-in and commitment. That means pew potatoes are no longer acceptable. The coming for an hour and leaving and getting filled up for the day is no longer good enough. You see, when we set the expectations low, that's exactly what we're going to get. What are the expectations in your church? How are you asking people for a buy-in and a commitment for God's work? I'm sure most of you saw the Barna study not so long ago that talked about the number of church members that were asked about how their church was fulfilling the Great Commission. And you know the saddest part about that? They didn't know what the Great Commission was. So when we helped them with the Great Commission to say, did you know that your church was around to make disciples? Less than half knew that that's the reason their church existed. Now, friends, to you and I as leaders of the church, we think that's pretty incredible. How could someone not be in church, be a member of a church, and not know that that's why we exist? But friends, we have work to do. We have work to do in our own pews to let people know why we exist. No wonder we're making the decisions we're making that are not leading to making disciples because we don't have the base understanding that that is indeed our purpose. You know, many of you have probably heard of Adam Hamilton, right? Being from the Midwest, we hear a lot about Adam Hamilton, and I'm so grateful for his leadership. But Adam Hamilton says these things. We need to know 4 questions. You know, when we talk to new people, we keep thinking, oh, they're going to ask me a question I don't know. They're going to test my biblical knowledge. And you know, I didn't go to seminary, so I'm not sure I want to have that conversation because they may lead to asking a question that I can't answer. But friends, those who are seekers, they're not wanting to know how to recite a verse or talk about something specific in the Bible for the most part. You know what they want to know? Why, God? Why, God? Why do you choose to follow this God? Why is it important? Why do you choose this lifestyle? How does it make a difference in your life? Why, God? And then why do I need a church? What does a church have to do with it? Why would that make a difference? And then the third question, why your church? You see, most of the time we start with trying to sell our church first. Well, you need to come to my church. Well, friends, we're skipping to question 3 when they're still on question 1, why God? And then there's this 4th question. To whom does the church belong? To whom does the church belong? You see, sometimes we get it messed up, friends. We think the church belongs to us. We are just the current occupants. The church belongs to Jesus Christ. The church is the bride of Christ. And how are we treating the bride? How are we fulfilling the mission of the bride? Because, see, sometimes I think we forget that. And when we forget that, our own personal preferences overtake the mission. Our own personal relationships with one another overtake the mission because we have forgotten whom the church belongs to. See, we have to go from persuasion and consensus to collaborative leadership. Most of you that have heard me speak before know that one of my key words is accountability. Yes, we can and should hold people accountable in our churches. You see, we're looking for missional leadership. Now, I'm not talking about missions service. I'm talking about missional leadership. Missional leadership is leadership that leads the church on its missional responsibilities to make disciples. We need more accountability for missional leadership. Some of you have heard me say this before, but this is what drives me each and every day. Is when you go to the pearly gates, do you want to be asked the question, how did you lead my church on the watch? That's the ultimate accountability, is to be prepared to answer that question, friends. How did you lead the church on your watch? Are you ready for that? Are you ready to answer that question? And would you be, let alone would God be, happy with the answer and the results? That's what true accountability looks like. That's Christ Church for Christ's impact. I want to move on now to the next area of cultural impact. How are we impacting our culture? First of all, we have to admit that our evangelism muscles have maybe deteriorated a little bit. Amen? Can we admit to that? I think the results kind of show that, right? So how are we going to flex? How are we going to flex? How are we going to strengthen our evangelism muscles? If that's the purpose in which we exist, we've got to work on that. We have a little workout to do. You know, the church is struggling to keep up with culture. Is your church? Does your church reflect the culture in which the church sits? You see, too many churches have become drive-in churches. We at one point lived by the church, but then we moved away for a variety of reasons, but we still drive in. I call them drive-in churches. We drive back into the church on Sunday. And so we believe that the neighborhood is though it was when we lived there. And so we make all the decisions based on that. And therefore we become culturally irrelevant. And then we get this mindset to say, you know, when we leave on Sunday, we go out and we deal with the secular world. We keep up with technology. We do what we have to do in the world that has moved on. But somehow, when we come back to church on Sunday, we think it's okay that the church remains exactly the same. Because you all believe that there's a sacredness in the building, or a sacredness in the traditions, or the sacredness in the way we've always done things. The sacredness is being the church. The sacredness is being the mission, is being on mission to make disciples. Everything else doesn't matter. See, we get stuck in the wrong places, doing with the wrong things, friends. And because of that, we have become foreigners in our own neighborhoods. We have become culturally irrelevant. You see, the U.S. population is expected to be majority minority by 2044. And I don't know if you've looked around this room, but we are not predominantly minority. We instead are predominantly a Caucasian middle-class denomination. That does not reflect our culture. So how are we going to be the church of the world today? And are we willing to risk and be bold for whatever that's going to take for Jesus? The world around us is changing the way it learns and communicates. But somehow, again, we get stuck in the way that we've always done things, that we've always taught things, that we've always communicated. The world has moved on, but many times our churches are stuck. And friends, if we want to communicate with our culture, we have to communicate in the language, and I mean that metaphorically and literally, in order for them to be able to understand. Sometimes we have our own language in our Christendom, do we not? NorthX. What's a NorthX? Come on. If you said that to out in the world, does anybody else know what that is besides a church person? But we continue to use that inside the church, not thinking about how is this relevant to the guests that we expect and prepare to receive each and every Sunday. Are you expecting guests each and every Sunday? Are you preparing for guests each and every Sunday? If we don't have that expectation, friends, again, maybe our own personal preferences and our comfort zone of being the family has gotten in the way of the purpose of our church. I want to move now to discipleship impact, our third area of impact. You know, discipleship is not a Bible study. Discipleship is not a curriculum. Discipleship is not disciple 1 and disciple 2 and disciple 3. Those may be elements of a discipleship pathway. But you see, we have gotten ourselves to be curriculum-driven in the way we think about discipleship, rather than thinking about discipleship as a way of being or a way of doing life, how you show up differently. See, we're not teaching people that. How does someone come into your church as a new believer and become a fully devoted follower of Jesus Christ? I can probably count on one hand, friends, the number of churches that I have been in around the country that have an intentional faith development process when we walked in. Now hear this. We're in the discipleship making business, and we have no intentional way of making disciples. And no wonder we have pew potatoes that we're all frustrated with. We must be intentional. What does it look like to be a fully devoted follower of Jesus Christ and develop the pathway to help people get there, knowing we will never get there, but we are striving towards that? And everything we do in the church is helping people develop into disciples, and disciples who disciple others. You see, somehow we've gotten stuck in discipleship that as long as I'm filling my head with information, I'm being a disciple. But it never translates into going out and having a God-sized impact on the world, sharing our faith so that others come to know Christ. We've got to have a shift from membership to discipleship. When I look at statistics for your churches before I come, I never look at membership. Membership doesn't really mean much anymore. And I don't mean that it's not meaningful to be a member. Don't hear that. But membership numbers are a misnomer. Because how many members do we have versus attenders? It's usually a third to a half. So what did it mean to be a member if you're not showing up? You see, because membership was about privilege, membership was not about responsibility. Discipleship is about responsibility. And see, all we were doing is getting them down the aisle to say yes to prayers, presence, gifts, service, and witness, but they probably didn't even know what they were saying yes to, nor the expectations around that. But now that we know better, we're going to do better. And we're going to have to do better with the intentional faith development process. It doesn't matter if you ever become a member, if we are building fully committed followers of Jesus Christ. You know, new churches around the country normally have 3 to 4 times membership averages than they do. Let me say that again. They have 3 to 4 times the attendance that they have of membership. See, because membership becomes about leading and responsibility and a commitment to grow in discipleship. See, it's kind of backwards of what we're doing today. You know, and we can't be afraid to talk about generosity. Generosity is part of discipleship. So friends, if you're one of those people who are telling your pastor we can't talk about money, then I have to say to you, can we rethink that? Because generosity is a part of discipleship. It cannot be taboo from the pulpit. And I think we've also forgotten Wesley's gift of small groups. Some of you have heard me tell this story before. I was invited, suddenly I knew something when I was getting ready to move to Missouri. Up until then, I was an idiot. You know how you're an idiot in your own homeland. And I was invited to speak to our Sunday school class. Now, I belong to a larger church of a worship attendance of about 400. And there was one Sunday school class that had 70 people in it. I'm not saying that's the best practice, but it was what it was. And they invited me to come in and share a lesson. And so I said, all right, so I know Sunday school is about an hour. So what do I have, about 45 minutes? And they went, oh, no. You don't have 45 minutes. 30? No, you've got about 15 to 20 minutes. I said, well, help me understand that. And they said, well, we have joys and concerns and announcements, and, we got to get our coffee, and we got to plan lunch and all that before we get started. So the very lesson was 15 to 20 minutes. We've lost the whole idea of what it meant to be Sunday school. Sunday school was the idea of classes and bands where we were supposed to be discipling others, where we were supposed to be talking about accountability. What does accountability look like in your church as a disciple? How's it going with your relationship with Christ? Where's it going well? Where are you falling off the tracks? How can I be helpful? How can I be supportive? Are we doing that kind of work? Are we really doing discipleship? Are we really doing life with one another? Friends, that's how we can have a discipleship impact, is we get back to the basics and we have an intentional process to help people develop into fully committed followers of Jesus Christ who understand that a mature disciple disciples others. Let's move on to relational impact. This is our fourth impact area. Once again, we are in the relationship business. Can we say that together? We are in the relationship business. Now, it starts with hospitality. Hospitality is that first impression. And for the most part, we do a pretty good job with hospitality. After all, each and every one of you are the friendliest church, right? That's what you all claim. We are the friendliest church. But sometimes it's that initial greeting that's the totality of our hospitality. You see, if we're really going to do relationship, we have to make ourselves available. I once was in a church where I was doing a consultation, and I came back on Sunday to preach and deliver the report. And I got there about 25 minutes before the worship service. And lots of cars in the parking lot. And I walked in to their fellowship area outside of the sanctuary, which was right off the entrance. There was not one person to be found. Not one. And I thought, if I were a guest today, what kind of impression would that leave? So I went on into the sanctuary, and it was about 3 minutes before worship started that finally the sound tech came so I could get mic'd up, and everyone else came on the dot. Because you know where they were? They were in Sunday school. You see, it was all about filling myself up. And I didn't want to come any earlier to make myself available to receive a guest. So we put Sunday school right up against worship. Because, see, we weren't expecting guests, or we didn't care if guests were greeted or not. Now, we sent some mystery worshipers in there, and do you think that they didn't have something to say about that? But see, we were thinking about ourselves. We were not thinking about and expecting and preparing for guests each and every Sunday. That's hospitality. My previous Bishop Snazy would say it's not about hospitality, but it's about radical hospitality. See, there's certain expectations of baseline hospitality. But we're talking about going above and beyond expectations. Because that's what people remember. If you just meet the baseline, that's not memorable. But we're talking about radical hospitality above and beyond. You see, I think there's another missing piece too, is sometimes we do that initial hospitality, okay? But friends, can I just be real for a minute? The number of churches that I've been into in the Susquehanna Conference that I have been completely ignored is unbelievable. I actually had people that would bend over me to shake the hand of someone sitting next to me, and I was completely ignored. And I can give you story after story after story of going to a church and leaving and having no human interaction whatsoever. So I know that doesn't apply to those of you in this church, in this room right now. But I'm saying sometimes we even need to work on baseline. But if we're talking about radical hospitality, what's next? What are those 3 lines of touches? And I don't mean literal touches. Let's be safe sanctuary here. But those 3 different touches outside the building, at the exterior entrance. And if you have more than one entrance, you need more than one person. And then at the sanctuary doors. And friends, ushers need to be trained as greeters. There should not be a distinction between the two. If your ushers are standing at the sanctuary doors handing out bulletins, they need to consider themselves as part of the greeter team. Because you may have had great hospitality up to that point, but if you have a grumpy usher, which I've ran into a few in my day, it could take away everything else that just happened. They need to be trained as a greeter as well. And then what? They sit in the sanctuary, and then what? What does the pre-worship experience, atmosphere, what's it like? Have you ever sat in the sanctuary and kind of felt like, what would it be if I didn't know all these people? Were they being talked to? Was there anything scrolling on screens? Was there any music in the background? Or were there just little cliques of people that were talking and ignoring the guest? And then here's the next thing. What do we do after worship? Besides ignore them, sometimes we ignore them because we're too busy making lunch plans for ourselves. We forget that we have a guest amongst us. And then what's the follow-up process look like? If you come once, what's going to have you come again? And a form letter from the pastor is not hospitality. That's a baseline expectation. How are we as lay people having a God-sized impact with relationships? As we are part of hospitality, we are part of the connection process. Have you ever had a church or a pastor where you've grown under that pastor? And then all of a sudden, the pastor is reappointed and you have a big old dip in worship attendance. Any of you ever been there? Ever wonder why that happens? Because the people were connected to the pastor, they were not connected to you as the congregation. That's on us, laity. That is on us. And you are limiting the size of your church and the number of people that you can reach if you are not connecting from laity to laity. One person can only have up to about 75 to 80 personal connections. And so if that's the case, if your pastor is the one that is the only one having personal connections, you have limited your church size to 75 to 80. And guess what the average size church in the U.S. is? 75. That's our job to have relational impact, laity. That's our job to do the connection. What's our role in our ministries? The ministries should all be aligned to our mission and vision. We don't do ministries just because we've been doing that ministry for 25 years. Can I get an amen? Amen. If you take nothing away, take away that. The role of our ministries, write this down, this is a main point. The role of ministries is help us to live into our vision, which is our unique way of making disciples our mission. That's why ministries should happen. Not just not because it's Aunt Ethel's pet project. It's to help us live out our vision and our mission. So we've got to be truth tellers to say, how effective is this? And how are we stepping up with passion in our areas of spiritual giftedness to lead those ministries that are specifically aligned? We have to lead the ministries. Again, we cannot expect our pastor to lead the ministries. That is our job. Our pastor is to be the teacher and the equipper. Now, let's talk about congregational care. Congregational care is different than pastoral care. Pastoral care is done only by your pastor. Congregational care is done by who? The congregation. You see, we have expectations that our care should be done only by the pastor because, hey, we're not trained for that. Can y'all pray? Amen? We can pray. We can go and share care and concern, and we can say, you know what? Our pastor is aware that you are suffering or having this issue or is celebrating with you, and I'll report back. It's about training. But friends, as laity, we are called for congregational care. We've got to get past the point of thinking that it's only a clergy job. And again, you may limit the possibilities for your church if we expect all the care to be done by the clergy. Now, I am not, don't think that I tell the clergy that they're off the hook completely. I don't want you to hear that. For the big stuff, the clergy do need to be there. Amen? Right? You would want them there. But there are some pastors that have congregations that say, oh, pastor, I don't want you showing up. Because, pastor, if you're showing up, that means I'm on my last leg. Because the pastor only shows up for the big stuff. Because other than that, we care for one another. Friends, that's another piece of this relational impact is that we need to be caring for one another. We need to think congregational care, not pastoral care. Now, let's get to our next area of missions impact. Now, again, some of you have heard me say this before. I have a pet peeve around the word outreach. Not that I'm against outreach, but the problem is we don't know what outreach means. And my guess is, if you were to unpack that with the neighbors around you right now, that each of you would have a different definition of what outreach is. Because is outreach missions, service to people? Or is outreach evangelism? Oh, well, it's kind of sort of both. Really? You see, because we're afraid of the E word anymore. So we had to water it down and call it outreach. But then most of the time, outreach is just missions. Because we've gotten out of the habit, and we even no longer have the expectations of evangelism. See, we do a lot of good deeds, do we not? Man, we are good deed people. But we don't intentionally share the good news like we should. And I think we can do both. But I think we need to have an understanding of that's what that means. We're called to do both, the good news and the good deeds together. Many of our churches do not know their mission field. Not only who's not living there, or who is living there, not having that knowledge and the particulars about who's living there, but we do not know, we have not named, we have not taken responsibility for our mission field. Here's what I mean. Is your mission field your zip code? Is your mission field your school district? Is your mission field a 2-mile radius? Is your mission field a street to the north, south, east, and west, or a highway, or a dirt path, or a river? Name it and claim it. Who are you going to take responsibility for reaching? Do not let Mission Insight, y'all know what that is, right? Our demographic program. Do not let Mission Insight, as a default, decide what your mission field is. Intentionally name, who is God calling your church to reach? Name it, own it, and then go after it. And friends, just because we did it last year or let alone 5 years ago does not mean that we know who our neighbor is today. Things change around you consistently. We need to be doing that work every year. At least once a year, we need to be looking at that information and making tweaks to our ministries and sometimes even our vision if it has changed that much. We've got to be a partner with our community. We can't expect them to come to us. But the best type of church are those stable churches that are an intricate part of the community. You know, we used to say at the Missouri conference, we were really looking for the day when someone called the conference office and said, "Why did X United Methodist Church close in our town? We really miss them." Never got those calls. You see, because nobody even noticed, because they'd already become invisible in their community. They were no longer having impact. They were a family chapel taking care of themselves. They were no longer impacting the community. See, that's what churches are meant to do, is the intersection of all things of the community. Now, we got to do one thing and do it well, friends. We can't be all things to all people. Sometimes that gets us into trouble. But we need to partner with the community needs. What are you known for in your community? Don't assume you know. Because what you think about your church and what others in the community outside your church may be two different things. Go to your local fire station in your local school. Talk to the principal, but talk to the counselor. The counselor really knows what's going on. What are our community needs? How could the church be helpful? And what do you know about our church? Then you'll know what the reputation is of your church. You know, the church used to be the third place. You've heard the saying, church, work, and home. What are you doing? Nothing new, church, work, and home. Y'all remember that? Or was that just a Midwest thing? Heard that? Okay. Well, you don't hear that much anymore, do you? Because church is not the third place for people anymore. How can we be the third place, or how can we go in the community and create third places? Now, those may be in unlikely places that maybe you're not hanging out right now. But I would like to challenge us to think that Jesus did not hang out only in the temple. As a matter of fact, I think that was the minority amount of his time, not the majority amount of his time. Where did he hang out? With the sinners. Where do we go to hang out with the people that we're trying to reach? Because you're not hanging out with the people you're trying to reach if we're sitting in the church. How do we create those third places? If we're going to have a relational impact and a missions impact, then we've got to create those third places outside the church. Some of you attended the Fresh Expressions workshop yesterday at our pre-conference workshop, and you learned that some of the biggest movements in our churches are not building new buildings, but they are creating third places in some very unusual places. Kayaking, bar church, meeting at the winery, gym, yoga, hiking. All of those things are created, and you're meeting people where they're at. What's your passion? Where do you like to hang out? Begin a group. Begin a fresh expression and create those third places outside your church. And then we can have missions impact. Our sixth area of impact is worship with impact. You know, I did a consultation not too long ago outside this conference, so I'm not telling stories on any of you. And I used the term wow worship. They're still struggling with that word that I used. Wow worship. What does that mean? Well, some are really upset with me because they think wow worship means it's got to have all these flashy lights and a big band and lots of noise. Friends, that is not what I mean by wow worship. Wow worship is when you go away saying, wow, I experienced God. Wow, I can't wait to tell somebody about that message. Wow, I can't wait to invite someone to come with me. You walk away changed. You walk away thinking about something. You walk away wanting to do differently. Friends, that's wow worship. We have to be reminded that liturgy is the work of the people. That's its definition. Liturgy is the work of the people. Clergy and laity together have to design and lead worship. We cannot leave our clergy to do all the worship design themselves. That is really hard to be creative and do that work alone all the time. Worship needs to be part of a community that laity are a part of. We have to think about worship as vertical and horizontal. It has to be multi-layered. It has to meet all of the senses. We've got to get to the point of thinking that people are going to show up on Sunday and move to the idea that we have to be missional and go out. Worship changes because your heart is breaking for the unchurched. When our hearts are breaking more for the unchurched than our own preferences in worship, we have become a missional church that will have worship with impact, friends. And that's what we need to move to. Our seventh area of impact is lay leadership. Impact, focus, lay leadership. If you are having a meeting and no one is saying, how is this helping us make disciples, friends? I challenge us to wonder if we're having the right conversations or we're making the decisions based on the right outcomes. If we are spending minutes or hours deciding on paint colors and whether or not that we should replace the dishwasher in the parsonage, I say we're having the wrong conversations. We don't have intentional leadership development processes. What's that nominations committee called? Nominations and lay leadership development. You see, some of us got on that committee because we think it's only, a month or two of work. But friends, it's year-long work. We're supposed to be raising up the next generation of leaders. Do we have an intentional process to do that? Our young people are looking for authentic and simplistic leadership. Be transparent. We've got to get to the point of our leaders governing the church and not managing. Leave the managing up to the pastor and your staff, whether it's paid or unpaid staff. You see, when no one is asking the big picture questions and governing, friends, that means no one is. If you as the counselor are not asking those questions of how are we doing on our mission, then I tell you, no one is. And we have church after church who is not asking that question. And we cannot be afraid of conflict. Conflict is a healthy thing. If you don't have conflict in your church, you probably are not pushing the envelope. It's how you manage conflict that makes a difference. It's how we treat one another. It's how we come to the table to have healthy conversation that matters. And we've got to have mentoring and collaboration as part of our lay leadership. Now, our eighth area, we're not going to have time to spend on, but this is a huge opportunity. If you are having a pastor's change, it is a huge opportunity for impact. Don't let the anxiousness or the nervousness of a new appointment allow you to let this opportunity slip by. This is a restart. It's an opportunity for us to all look at ourselves in a different way. It's an opportunity, so please take advantage of it. You know, as we started out today, what's the thing we talked about? We are called for impact. Can we say that again? We are called for impact. Are you ready for impact? Are you going to walk out of here changed? Are you going to walk out of here bold and courageously to do something new to reach new people? Status quo can no longer be acceptable. Challenge you. What kind of God-sized impact can you have? Here's what you need to do. Gather a team together. Study together the book. At the end of every chapter, there are 3 sets of questions for you to ponder and wrestle with. There's questions for the disciple, there's questions for the lay leader or board members, and there are questions for the pastor and staff. Really be honest. Work through those questions and figure out where you can have a God-sized impact. Now, I call you to now go and make an impact. And one of the ways that you're going to be able to do that is to gather a team and do a small group study. It's an 8-session study that's going to be available to you. No cost to you. You can do it at whatever pace you want in your local congregation. All you got to do is go to our website and sign up. We're going to talk a little bit more about that tomorrow. But get your small-sized group study together to plant and plan for your God-sized impact. Take a look at this video about the communities coming up.
Learning is not optional. Learning and applying is critical to keep up with our ever-changing culture. Learning is critical to become and stay relevant and competent. To support our continuous learning and to keep us relevant in our ministries, the Susquehanna Conference is pleased to offer our first series of learning opportunities. Starting this fall, both clergy and laity are invited to participate in a continuous learning community. 4 opportunities will be available. Opportunity 1, Impact. Opportunity 2, M3. Opportunity 3, Small Church Checkup. Opportunity 4, Communities of Practice. Here's the thing. All of us are called to learning communities. Here is why learning communities are so important.
Psychologist B.F. Skinner said that education is what survives when what has been taught has been forgotten. And so the role of continuous learning is a mindset that says we are going to be open to continuous learning at every single juncture within our business. We're going to ask questions. We're going to be comfortable with open-ended questions. And what that does is it filters into a behavioral mindset and attitude that then opens you up to be an adaptive organization.
So, are you ready to invest knowing we can all be more competent, compelling, and culturally relevant to do God's work? Education is the kindling of a flame, not the filling of a vessel. Kindle your flame by joining a fall learning community. For more information, please visit equippingvitalcongregations.com.
How about if we take this opportunity to thank Kay for the very valuable lessons we've learned today. Remember some of the key things that she talked about, that this is an opportunity for each and every one of us, but also that we take this back to our churches and help them also gain that opportunity to make an impact. Remember her phrase, we are a called people. Can everybody say that? We are a called people. We are called for kingdom impact, and we are called to have a mighty impact. And one of the things she highlighted is the role of our ministries is to live out our vision and mission for making disciples. So keep that in mind as we go through not only these next 3 days, but also what is happening back in your local churches. If I saw many folks taking notes as we were going through this, and keep in mind that This session is being live streamed. It may be on Facebook, I'm not sure, but it's certainly being live streamed on the website. It's also going to be available for viewing later on after conference is over so that you'll be able to take notes from that. A critical part of our community are our youth and our young adults. If you look around the room, many of us are of a more senior age. I'm being generous. Well, or no hair. But here to talk about what is happening not only with youth and youth ministry is Audrey Wilder. Audrey is the director of Young People's Ministry with the conference, and she'll spend a few moments talking with us today. Okay.
Thank you, and thank you for the opportunity to be here. It's always an honor to get to address the laity as one myself. I appreciate all that you are doing in your local congregations to make a difference in the life of the teens in your local congregation and in your community. So thank you for the ministry that you do. I have just a couple fundraisers that I want to tell you about that we're doing, because that's kind of a large part of what we do here at Annual Conference. We have scholarships that help support youth attending Annual Conference. So we do that fundraiser here because, you know, you're here and it's Annual Conference and we should raise funds to get other kids to Annual Conference. So we have three kinds of shirts for sale. We have green Better Together t-shirts. We have black long sleeve Better Together t-shirts, and we have gray polo shirts. And those are all a variety of prices and sizes that you can find at the registration alcove. Our goal is to raise $2,500 for scholarships for attendance at Annual Conference for our students. With the pre-orders that you made before Annual Conference, we raised $1,674 already, so thank you. So that means we're basically only $826 away. So you guys can help me out in helping us reach our goal. The other fundraiser that we do is for Youth Service Fund, and Youth Service Fund is an international program that happens for United Methodist. It's money raised by youth, administered youth for the benefit of youth. And we raise money here in the Susquehanna Annual Conference. We send a portion of that money to the national YSF, and that is used nationally and internationally. And then we use 70% to give grants within our local annual conference. That's to your churches and to your youth ministries. So if you have youth ministries, new ideas, exciting opportunities, discipleship pathways that you want to explore, we have some grant money for you. So the grants are available you can apply through October 31st, and we would love to give you some money. But to be able to give you some money, you got to give us some money first. That's kind of how this grant thing works. So we have multiple opportunities for raising money for YSF this year. There's a device charging station over in the back corner of this other room. Once we join together, you'll be able to see that. If you are running low on battery on any of your devices, you can head over there and charge it and give us a little money for that. We have a gift basket silent auction that is presently being set up. So once the laity session is done, you can head over to the registration alcove on the end and see all the baskets that were donated by you guys. So thank you for those donations as well. And the final, and it seems to be most exciting, fundraiser we have for Youth Service Fund is the Pie and Face Challenge.
Now, am I on? Correct me if I'm wrong, Audrey, but as I recall, there are about 6 clergy folks that are part of the challenge, and only Audrey and I are the only laity in the challenge. Now, last year, we had a challenge of clergy versus laity, and I really felt bad because you folks were so supportive in terms of voting for laity that the laity overwhelmingly contributed more than the clergy in terms of, you know, the clergy versus the laity jar. And I'm very competitive. I was very competitive with Reverend Beth Jones, so much so I felt sorry for her. And so I'm trying to make it up this year. And so I asked Audrey to bring Beth's jar so that, and some of you may know, Beth is finishing her last year as a district superintendent. She's going into extension ministries come July 1st. And I really want Beth to leave as a winner. And so my wife and I, although there is a healthy start in this jar already, we are helping out Beth Jones to become the winner of this Pie in the Face challenge. That's not to say that either one of us would mind getting a pie in the face, but we want Beth to leave as a winner.
So there are 8 of us that are competing to win to get a pie in the face. When was the last time you competed to get pied in the face? I don't think I've ever done that, actually. But what we do for our youth. And I have been, one of the things that we have been talking about in conference leadership is the why. Why are you here? Why are you in ministry? Why are you focused for making a God-sized change in the world? My why are the students. I am here to advocate and love and share the grace of God with teenagers. That is my calling, and that is what I embrace wholeheartedly. And I am so pleased that we have 13 students with us this year. They are wonderful. They have already been working. They probably harassed you to buy a name tag holder. So I'm just going to have them stand up where they are. They're back there. You guys stand up. There you go. All right, you guys can sit down. I was reminded as we were talking in our group last night that in their confirmation, in our confirmation, in any confirmations you participate in your local congregation, teenagers are admitted as full adults, as full members of the congregation, whether they are adults or not. That means they have all the responsibility that comes with membership and discipleship in a United Methodist Church. I want to thank these students for taking on that responsibility of being a full member of the United Methodist Church and participating here at annual conference. We have 3 who are currently taking exams and will be coming this afternoon after they finish their exams. They are fully committed to their responsibility as being disciples in the United Methodist Church. So I hope you will continue to find ways to support the discipleship pathways for your students and to support the Young People's Ministry here at Annual Conference. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Audrey. It's perfect. Thank you so much, Audrey. The youth of this conference are so important. I mean, many folks look at the youth and young adults as the future of the church, and they're more than that. They are part of us, part of the church. So please keep that in mind, not only for the youth that are here, but the youth within your own congregations. And as you're thinking about those things, look around you right now. Take a few minutes and look around you. You might know the person sitting next to you. You may not. Chances are that you don't. And this is the opportunity where we're going to, this isn't your typical meet and greet that you have at church. As my wife and I call it, the obligatory stand up and shake. Sometimes it's shaking like this, but in terms of being scared to approach a stranger. But we're going to be taking a few minutes to learn more about each other. A little bit more about each other and learning about some of the individuals that are here that are part of the lay leadership of the conference, but also some of the folks within your geographic concerns, your districts, as well as folks that are either close by you or folks that you want to meet. So as you're looking around the room right now, find possibly some folks that you don't know, because we're going to be coming back to that in a little bit. Yes, it's okay to approach a stranger and say hi. That's what annual conference is. Not just, please just look, please don't break out into sessions yet. Please come back. Okay, folks. Time out, time out, time out. Let's come back. I didn't give you license yet to break up. We have a few more things to cover. It's good that you showed that initiative, and I hope that you'll show that back in your churches. But one of the things that I want you to realize is many times there are a number of us, myself included, who feel like we may be alone in a crowded room. You know, there are so many people there that we don't know. And so what's going to be happening over the next 40 minutes roughly is to go over an exercise so that you get to meet a few people a little bit more closely, and that they will be, you'll get to know about them, learn about them, but also you'll have a chance to pray with them and for them during the time of conference. First, what I'd like to do, though, is to introduce some of the leadership that are here among you, part of the lay leadership. So, as I name your name, if you could stand and continue standing while I introduce the leadership team of the conference. First, the Associate Conference Lay Leader, Frank Derby. Is he here today? Frank, are you out there? Dr. Frank Derby? No, he's not here yet. Okay. He will be here later today, I know that for sure. We also have some district lay leaders in attendance. From the Altoona district, Sally Swenson. Is Sally here? No, Sally's not here. Okay. How about from Lewisburg? Jess Olajinsky. Is Jess here? No. Oh, my. How about Tom Taylor from Scranton Wilkes-Barre? All right. I know Steve Bainbridge from State College. He was over in that section. Good. Flo Waybright from York. Is she here? She's way in the back. I don't think she's here. Candace Chase from Williamsport. Is Candace here? I don't think she was able to make it because of work. And Joe Pop from Harrisburg. Is Joe here? Joe's up in front. Thank you. Please give these folks a hand. And stay standing, please. How about all the certified lay ministers, lay speakers, also if you're on any one of the district's committees, whether it be DCOM or superintendency or any of the things at the local district level, if you wouldn't mind standing. Thank you. Let's thank these folks for their service. Thank you so much. Now you can be seated. Okay, there's going to be some more exercise coming because I know you've been sitting for a while. Not that you weren't on the edge of your seats for Kay's presentation, but you know, there comes a time where you're just sitting too long, and you'll find that over the next 3 days, you're going to want to get up and move around from time to time whenever you get a chance. How about if we go through the various districts that are represented here? First, let's start with the Altoona district. Everybody from the Altoona district, if you would mind standing. Let's give these folks a hand. Look around at one another, because these are your neighbors. Thank you. How about the Lewisburg district? Look around at, this is the Lewisburg district here today. Scranton, Wilkes-Barre, northeastern Pennsylvania. Good job. Thank you so much. State College. These folks aren't afraid to go. When we say we are, they say. Okay, now how about for the conference one? We are better together. Let's try that again. We are better together. Thank you. The York District, those from the York District, if they could stand. Thank you. Okay, from the Williamsport District, if you could stand, please. Okay, everybody from the Williamsport District, if you could sit down, except my wife, Diane. If she could. My wife, Diane, by the way, is here as a member at large. And we're both from the Williamsport District. But I saved the Harrisburg District for last because folks from the Williamsport, I'm sorry, but my wife and I have relocated to the Harrisburg District in February, and because our grandkids and our children live in the Harrisburg area. So we are now residents of the Harrisburg District. And those from the Harrisburg District, could you join us, please? Thank you. Thank you very much. Please be seated. If you remember, I asked you a few moments to look around and begin to introduce yourself to some folks that you may or may not know that are around you or close by. This is the part where you get to meet them a little bit better. So what we're going to do over the next 10 minutes, roughly, is that you get to meet them, introduce yourself, your church, maybe some of your interests, things of that nature. Because these are folks that you can now know as friends and fellow Christians and fellow people at annual conference. And you also have an opportunity to pray for them, not only within your group, but also throughout conference. Because we have a lot of things to cover with conference, not only in terms of information, but in decisions that we're making. And so it's important that we be in touch with our God to get some guidance and to have the Holy Spirit among us as we discuss and we ponder and we decide things as we move through conference. So what I'd like you to do is to gather in groups of 4 to 8 people. You can stand. If you slightly turn your chairs, that's okay, but we're going to have you return your chairs to where they were whenever you started. That's very important if you do change them. Okay. Like I said, introduce yourself to one another, learn about one another. Hopefully you'll share your meals coming up with them going forward, so that way you'll have somebody to eat with. And more importantly, before we stop this activity in about 10 minutes, please commit to praying for each other in your small group during the time of annual conference at least. You can certainly pray for them for the coming year as well. But at least during the next 3 days of annual conference, please be in prayer for each other. I would like all of you in the room to take a pledge with me. I would like you to repeat after me. I promise never to say, I am just a lay person. When God says, follow me, I will follow. I am called for kingdom impact. Amen? Amen? Thank you. Speaking of prayer, hopefully all of you have brought your cross. You may want to pull that out now because we're going to have a time of prayer. We're going to close the session with a song and a word of prayer, and also to offer grace as we look forward to the food of which we're able to partake. To do this year, I've asked that Paul McReynolds, seminarian from Gammon Theological Seminary, to join us. He's having an internship experience with the Office of Connectional Ministries at the Susquehanna Conference. And as Paul's making his way to stage here, I'd like you to all stand up and hold one another's hands, also holding onto your cross if you can at the same time. And if you can't do that, grow a third hand. But no, seriously, if you can hold hands with one another, I'd appreciate that. Okay, even if it means reaching across aisles. Okay, because keep in mind, let us be better together, one with Christ, in these next moments with Paul.
It is good to be with each and every one of you on this afternoon. Let us pray first, and then I will sing afterwards. Let us all bow our heads. Dear Lord, we thank you for this moment to be in this space with you. We thank you for this room of your servants who have come and gathered together to learn more and to unify our spirits together. Lord, give us understanding and wisdom in the way that we should go in this laity movement. God, thank you for giving us the strength. Thank you for the mothers and the fathers who started ministries in their houses. God, we thank you for those of us in this place who have given their hearts and their souls to your ministry. God, develop in us a spirit of worship, a spirit of love and kindness and generosity in all the places that we travel and go to. God, with the people that we encounter, God, give us the insight and the heart to love on those who feel like they are unlovable. God, give us the strength. Nourish us with your love and your joy. Let your word influence us to be better servants of your Son, Jesus Christ. We say this in your Son, Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Sing the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. Amen.